They thought they could erase me from the company I built. But they forgot the contract that started it all. For a moment, there's silence, the kind that feels like the calm before a storm. That line, that's how my story begins. I'm Ethan Carter, co-founder of Brightwave Technologies, or at least I used to be. Before greed, lies, and a single signature changed everything. When I think back, it all started in a small rented garage behind Ryan's apartment in Austin, Texas. 3 friends chasing one dream, to build something that mattered. Ryan was the face of the company, smooth talker. Great smile, the kind of guy investors trusted on sight. Mark was the numbers man, logical, quiet, precise. And me? I was the builder. The guy who wrote the first line of code. The one who stayed up till sunrise fixing bugs no one else could see. We had nothing but old laptops, empty coffee cups, and faith that someday all this effort would mean something. I still remember those nights, laughter echoing through that tiny space, the hum of machines, the smell of cold pizza. Back then, we weren't just friends. We were brothers. We promised each other, no matter how big we get, we stay the same. And I believed that. A year later, Brightwave took off. We built a software tool that changed how small businesses manage their online presence. Investors started calling. We got featured in tech blogs. For the first time, people outside our circle knew our names. Ryan handled all the pitches. He was magnetic. He could sell the dream better than any of us. Mark took care of finances, spreadsheets, projections, and budgets. And I built the product that kept us alive. I didn't care about the spotlight. I cared about results, about the users who said our software saved them hours of work. That was my fuel. That was my pride. The money started flowing. The office grew from that garage to a glass-walled downtown suite. We'd made it. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I can see the signs, small, harmless things that didn't feel like much back. Then Ryan started saying things like, "Don't worry about the contracts, Ethan, I'll handle it." Or, "You don't need to be in every investor meeting. We've got you covered." And I'd smile and let it go. Because I trusted him. Because we were friends. One night, after a long coding session, Ryan slid a few papers across my desk. He said it was just routine investor paperwork, something about simplifying the equity structure. He laughed, patted my shoulder, and said, "You trust me, right?" And of course I did. Why wouldn't I? I skimmed the first page, lots of legal words, standard business stuff, and I signed. That's what partners do, right? They trust each other. The pen left a dark mark on the paper. And for some reason, it felt heavier than usual. If I'd known what that signature truly meant, I would have burned the paper right then and there. Still, for a while, things seemed perfect. We celebrated our first $1 million milestone at a rooftop bar, just the 3 of us. Ryan made a toast to the dream we built from nothing. We laughed, clinked glasses, and shouted over the music. I looked at them, these 2 people who'd been with me through everything, and I felt proud. Not of the company, but of us. Because we'd done it together. Through sleepless nights and near disasters, through arguments and breakthroughs, we'd built something real. A family of 3 dreamers who refused to quit. I didn't know that while I was celebrating the dream. They were already planning my exit. A few weeks later, Ryan mentioned he was working with a consultant to reorganize our ownership model. He brushed it off like it was no big deal. "Just paperwork," he said again. I nodded. I was deep in product updates and didn't want to get involved in the business side. Sometimes, trust blinds you more than betrayal ever could. I see that now. There was this one moment I can't forget. We were leaving the office late at night. Ryan looked at me and said, almost jokingly, "Man, you really don't care about the business side, do you?" I laughed and said, "As long as the company's doing well, I'm happy." He smiled. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker I didn't understand back then. Maybe guilt. Maybe greed. Maybe both. By the end of that year, Brightwave was worth millions. We were being courted by big investors, people talking about acquisitions and expansion. Ryan handled most of it, with Mark managing numbers. I stayed buried in work, building new features, hiring developers, and keeping our systems running. I told myself, this is teamwork. That's what makes us unstoppable. But deep down, there was a feeling, a whisper in my chest, that something wasn't right. Phone calls that stopped when I entered the room. Emails that didn't include me anymore. Meetings scheduled last minute, without my notice. I told myself I was overthinking it. I didn't want to believe that the people I called brothers could ever betray me. I couldn't have been more wrong. If I had just asked one more question, read one more document, maybe I could have stopped what was coming. But I didn't, because I trusted them, and sometimes, that's the worst mistake you can make in business, confusing friendship with loyalty. I didn't know it then. But that one signature would cost me everything. Or so they thought. They say success brings people together. I learned it can also push you out the door you built yourself. Brightwave was everywhere. Our logo on banners at conferences. Our name in trade magazines. A panel in San Francisco, an award in New York, a podcast in Chicago. I was proud, really proud. Ryan shined on stage, telling the story of how we changed the game. Mark stood beside him with the numbers, growth charts rising like a sunrise. And me? I stood behind the screen, making sure the product never crashed when the world was watching. That was my role. I liked it that way. The emails poured in. We love your platform. This saved our team hours. I remembered the garage and smiled. We had made it from nothing. Late nights had turned into launch days, and launch days had turned into headlines. When a big investor compared us to a company we once admired, Ryan sent me a screenshot with fireworks emojis. I texted back a simple line, "Back to work." He replied, "That's why we win." But tiny things began to slide out of place, like screws loosening one by one. It started with meetings, first a few I didn't need to be in, because they were purely financial. Then a board update I learned about after it ended. I told myself it's fine. Let the business guys handle the business. I'll build. Then files went missing. Folders I kept clean and organized suddenly had new names. Access permissions shifted. "We're just tightening security," Mark said. "New compliance rules." He sounded calm, rational. Why would I doubt him? He'd been the one who stayed up with me to match receipts when we couldn't afford a bookkeeper. Still, a quiet tension took root. I would walk past the glass conference room and see Ryan at the head of the table, laughing with people I didn't recognize. I'd raise my hand in the doorway, a small wave. He'd nod, then look back at the deck on the wall slides I hadn't seen. I felt like a ghost drifting through my own office. One Tuesday morning, I reached the lobby with a coffee in hand. I tapped my access badge against the reader. Red light. Again, red light. The security guard frowned. "Try it slower." I did. Red. He called upstairs. After a beat, he said, "HR wants to see you." A small chill ran down my back, but I told myself it was a system glitch. These things happen. HR sat me down. No smile, no water. Just a folder and a careful voice. "Ethan, as of last quarter, your role is classified as contractor, not partner." I let out a short laugh, the kind that slips when the floor tilts. "I think there's a mistake." She turned the folder toward me. Paper, stamps, signatures. Per the latest structure, all executive ownership sits with the holding company. I felt my chest tighten. "Where am I on the partner list?" She swallowed. "You're not on it." I heard myself speak, but my voice sounded far away. "I co-founded this company." She looked down. "I'm sorry." Two words that did nothing. I walked to the elevator, but my badge didn't call one. Security approached, polite but firm. "We'll escort you." People passing by glanced, then glanced away. My face felt hot. I wanted to shout, to pound the glass and demand, "Open the door, it's mine." But I didn't. I stepped into the elevator, and the doors swallowed me whole. Outside on the sidewalk, the world looked too bright. I called Ryan, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Call me, now." No reply. I called Mark, he declined. Then a message, "In a meeting. We'll call later." He didn't. By late afternoon, anger gave way to numbness. I replayed old nights when Ryan and I split one sandwich because payday was late. I saw Mark and me at a whiteboard, solving one stubborn problem until sunrise. I remembered a rooftop toast, to the dream we built. If I'm honest, it wasn't the money that hurt. It was the quiet way they cut me out, as if our history wasn't worth a conversation. The next day, I went to see my lawyer, Ms. Whitman's sharp eyes, calm voice. She listened without interrupting, then asked for every document I had, emails, signed forms, board notes, anything. We spread them out on a long table, contracts in a neat line, like dominoes waiting to fall. She tapped a clause with her pen. "This routine update you signed." It gave power of attorney to the holding company for equity changes linked to investor demands. I blinked. Ryan said it was just to simplify reporting. She nodded, lips pressed thin. It simplified it, yes. We followed the paper trail. The holding company managed by Ryan and Mark consolidated shares. Mine included my equity. Diluted to almost nothing. My founder status reclassified. On paper, I looked like a vendor who had moved on. My throat burned. I built the code they're selling. How can I be erased? Ms. Whitman folded her hands. "Ethan, I know this is hard to hear. But they used what you signed. It wasn't clean. It wasn't kind, but it was. Careful. Careful." That word cut deeper than any shout. They didn't stumble into this. They planned it. I left her office and drove without knowing where I was going. I pulled into the parking lot of a small park we used to visit when we needed fresh air. For a long time I sat in the car, staring at the steering wheel. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I felt anger, yes, but under it was grief for the version of us that didn't survive success. I whispered to no one. They didn't just steal my shares. They stole our dream. That night, I opened my old archives folders I had kept since the garage days. I clicked through screenshots, early drafts, photos of whiteboards full of scribbles only we could read. I wasn't looking for proof. I was looking for us. For a sign that I hadn't imagined the brotherhood we once had. At the very bottom of a directory, inside a folder named Founders Core, there was a file I hadn't opened in years. Master_contract_final.pdf. I clicked. The screen filled with text. Page 1. Agreement for ownership and assignment of core intellectual property. My heart started to pound, not with fear this time, but with something steady and bright. I scrolled. There it was. A paragraph I remembered drafting myself because I was the only one who cared about the fine details back then. The core source code, the central patents, the architecture plan assigned to me as the original author. License to the company only while I remained a recognized founder. If my founder status was removed without my written consent, the license terminated. It was plain. It was signed. By all three of us. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The room felt different. Like I had opened a window and let in air after being trapped too long. They had built a careful plan to push me out. And stepped right past the lock I had placed on day one. The very contract that started our dream had become the wall that guarded it. Didn't text Ryan. I didn't call Mark. Not yet. I sat in the quiet and read the document again, slowly, line by line, letting each word settle. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to move with care. The same care they used on me. A thought came to me, soft, steady, certain. Justice doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it arrives in the exact language you wrote yourself. I saved the file to 3 places. I printed a copy and slid it into a folder. Then I turned off the light, stood at the window, and looked out at the night. For the first time since the badge flashed red, I felt something close to peace. Not because the pain had gone, but because I finally held the truth again. They thought they'd written me out, but they'd forgotten what I'd written first. When you plan revenge, you don't shout. You listen. After the shock of betrayal faded, I didn't make noise. I didn't post. I didn't confront. I didn't beg. I vanished, quietly. My world became smaller. One corner table in a coffee shop. One laptop, one cup of black coffee that always went cold before I finished it. Every morning, I opened the master contract like it was a compass pointing home. I read it line by line, slowly, carefully. The words never changed. The core intellectual property remains the exclusive creation and ownership of Ethan Carter. Me, my name, my work. The company could only use it while I was a recognized founder. Remove me, and that license ended. That clause was the one thing Ryan and Mark forgot to erase. I became my own detective. While the world thought I had disappeared, I was building something, a case, not a company. I spent hours rewatching Brightwave's public demos. I could still hear the heartbeat of my own code in every movement of their software. The same patterns, the same logic, the same fingerprint that only I could have written. It was like hearing your own voice on someone else's tape. I saved every clip, every screenshot, every timestamp. I cataloged version numbers, update notes, even their public changelogs. I compared them with my own backups. It was all there. My work still alive. Still there's a name, but mine in truth. When you're patient, even silence becomes evidence. Ms. Whitman, my lawyer, called me after reviewing the contract again. Her voice was calm but certain. Ethan, every line of their product still runs on your code. That means they're using it illegally. I asked her how strong our position was. She said, ironclad. That word hit differently. After weeks of confusion and grief, hearing ironclad felt like breathing again. She told me to gather proof, not emotion. If you want justice, she said, don't argue. Show them the truth. So I did. I built a digital binder, the blueprint, I called it. Inside were screenshots of their product running my architecture. Archived. Messages from Ryan thanking me for the genius behind our engine. Emails with attached prototypes under my name, old development logs showing authorship, and the signed master contract, dated, sealed. Undeniable. Every file had a purpose. Every timestamp was a weapon, quiet, sharp, and legal. One evening, I took a slow walk downtown, past Brightwave's headquarters. The building stood tall, polished glass reflecting the sunset that didn't care who owned it. People walked in and out with badges that used to open doors for me. I didn't stop them. I didn't want back in. I just stood across the street, hands in my pockets, and whispered to myself, it's not about money anymore. It's about truth. Then I turned and kept walking. The truth didn't need to scream. It just needed time. At night, I saw Ryan and Mark everywhere. Their faces were on magazine covers, conference panels, business podcasts. They talked about leadership, innovation, and friendship, the same words they had once said to me. Every headline was a reminder of the lie they were living. But instead of anger, I felt something colder, clarity. They were celebrating my work, using my code, my name buried in their success. I let them enjoy it. I wanted them to feel untouchable, comfortable, safe. Because that's when people make mistakes. A month later, Ms. Whitman called again. Ethan, she said, Brightwave is in acquisition talks with a major tech group. It's about to go public. If you move now, you can stop it. Do you want to? I looked out the cafe window. The rain had stopped, and the streetlights reflected off the puddles like small pieces of light. Broken, but shining. Do I want to? I thought about the nights we started this dream, the promises we made, the trust we buried. Then I thought about the moment that badge turned red and the door locked in my face. My answer came out quiet but steady. Oh, I do. We prepared the legal notice. Every line was polite, professional, devastating. It wasn't revenge on paper, it was truth in motion. Step 1. File the claim for termination of IP license. Step 2. Send notice of unauthorized use of proprietary code. Step 3. Deliver evidence to the acquiring company's legal team. No shouting. No threats. Just facts. I reread the letter before signing it. Pursuant to the master contract, the license granted to Brightwave Technologies has been terminated. Continued use of the core code and systems constitutes infringement. That was it. The quiet sentence that would undo everything they'd built on top of me. I signed my name, Ethan Carter, and exhaled. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of calm. It was strange. I'd waited for this moment, but it didn't feel explosive. It felt right. Balanced. I realized something. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about correction. It's about setting things back to where they were meant to be. I walked outside, felt the cool wind hit my face, and looked up at the quiet city skyline. Somewhere in those lights, Ryan and Mark were probably celebrating another victory. But they didn't know that. Somewhere below, a different kind of story was already unfolding, one written with patience. Not anger. Justice doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it shows up in the same words you once wrote yourself. The next morning, I watched the sunrise from my coffee shop seat. My phone buzzed, Ms. Whitman's text. Filing complete. I closed my eyes and smiled. It wasn't over yet, but the first move was made. They took everything from me. Now I'd take back everything they built with it. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it signs a document. 3 days before Brightwave's big acquisition, M.Y. lawyer Ms. Whitman filed the injunction. No threats, no press conference, just a quiet document sent to the right inbox. It claimed what I already knew. Brightwave was using my code without authorization. The same code I wrote in a garage years ago. By afternoon, the silence in their office broke. The buyer froze the deal pending review. Investors started calling. Panic spread like a spark through dry leaves. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt patient. I didn't need to go near their building to know what was happening. I could see it online. A flood of urgent meetings on LinkedIn calendars, vague tweets about unexpected delays, and frantic messages I was never supposed to read again. Then came the calls. Ryan first. His voice cracked through the line, rough and loud. Ethan, what are you doing? You're destroying everything we built. I looked at the contract on my desk, my signature perfectly intact. No, Ryan, I said softly. You did that when you destroyed our trust. There was a pause, long enough for him to understand I wasn't bluffing. Then the sound of anger, fear, and guilt tangled into one breath before he hung up. I didn't call back. Within 24 hours, the news broke. Brightwave's acquisition suspended over IP dispute. Reporters replayed clips of Ryan and Mark bragging about the unique engine they had built. The irony was almost poetic. Emails leaked. Investors pulled back. Their share values fell overnight. The company that had cut me out of its story was now front-page material for all the wrong reasons. I didn't gloat. I just listened. They thought silence meant defeat. But silence is what makes truth echo louder. By day 2, Ms. Whitman called. The buyer's lawyers have reviewed everything, she said. They're walking away. Brightwave's on defense. They want to talk settlement. I nodded. Good, let's make it clean. The next morning, I walked into a neutral conference room. Plain walls, long table, no logos. Ryan and Mark were already there, looking like men who hadn't slept. For a moment, I remembered the friends I once built a dream with. Then I remembered the night they locked me out. The meeting began. Papers slid across the table. Words like ownership, royalties, and reinstatement filled the air. When it came time to sign, I took a quiet breath. The agreement was simple. Full IP rights restored to me. Public acknowledgement of authorship. A fair portion of liquidation profits if the company wound down. Justice. Written in ink. Ryan stared at the contract, then at me. Ethan, you've won. What more do you want? I met his eyes. Nothing. Just the truth, in writing. He hesitated, then signed. Mark followed. When the papers reached me, I added my name last. The pen moved slow, steady, deliberate. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like correction. As we stood to leave, Ryan stopped me in the hallway. His voice was low, shaking. Ethan, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to end like this. I turned to him. It didn't have to. You chose it. He swallowed hard. I thought success would fix everything. I looked at him for a long moment, then said, success can't fix betrayal. It just hides it until someone opens the door. He looked down. Can you forgive me? For a second, I saw the man who once called me brother. I nodded slowly. I forgive you. But I'll never trust you again. He didn't argue. He just stood there, quiet, smaller somehow, as I walked away. A week later, workers began removing the Brightwave logo from the building's glass wall. One letter at a time. The sound of metal scraping metal echoed faintly in the wind. I stood across the street, watching it fall apart piece by piece. Not with satisfaction, but with peace. This wasn't about payback anymore. It was about setting the story straight. I whispered to myself, they tried to write me out of my own story. But the truth has better handwriting. As the final letter came down, I turned and walked away. The sky was clear, the city humming again, unaware of the quiet justice that had just taken place. Revenge isn't always about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about rebuilding yourself. Trust, once broken, can't be repaired, but self-respect, once reclaimed, can rebuild an entire world. Revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just peace. Months had passed since everything ended. Brightwave was gone, its glass walls replaced by a for lease sign. The world had already moved on, investors chasing new ideas, articles fading down the feed. But I wasn't chasing headlines anymore. I was rebuilding, quietly, carefully. My new office was small. A single desk, a few shelves, sunlight streaming through a window that overlooked a park. No expensive chairs, no trophies, no big-name investors. Just me, my laptop, and a reminder on the wall that read, "Build again." But wiser. Every morning I'd open the blinds, make coffee, and start working on something new. But this time, I wasn't building for validation or money. I was building for peace. The kind of peace that comes after the storm finally runs out of rain. People often ask me if it was worth it, the fight, the sleepless nights, the legal battles. And I tell them, yes, but not for the reasons they think. It wasn't about winning. It was about closure. When you're betrayed, you want to make noise. You want the world to know what they did. But the truth is, justice doesn't need a crowd. It just needs courage. I had spent years believing friendship could replace formality, that a handshake was stronger than a signature. I was wrong. Friendship is built on trust. Business is built on clarity. And when you mix the two without boundaries, you lose both. That realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. Because for the longest time, I thought love for what we built would protect us from greed. It didn't, but still, I don't regret the journey. Without it, I wouldn't have learned the difference between building something great and protecting it. A few months after the settlement, I started something new. Not a company this time, a mentorship program for young founders. I called it the Honest Start. Every week, I met with small groups of dreamers, people who reminded me of who I used to be, hopeful, passionate, maybe a little naive. We sat in that little office and talked about contracts, partnerships, and trust. Not just the business side, but the human side, the emotions no spreadsheet could measure. I told them, before you build your company, build your foundation. Know who you're building with, and never sign what you don't read. They listened. Some took notes. Some just nodded silently, like they already knew what it felt like to be burned. Watching them grow became my redemption. I didn't need to prove anything to Ryan or Mark anymore. The real victory was helping others avoid my mistake. You can lose your company and still win back yourself. That line became my truth. Because while they had tried to erase me from a business, they could never erase me from my own story. Looking back, I realized revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about getting clarity. I didn't need them to fall. I just needed to rise again without hate. There's a strange kind of strength in forgiveness. It doesn't erase the past, but it frees you from carrying it. I forgave Ryan and Mark, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. When you stop waiting for apologies, you start healing. Now when people mention Brightwave, I don't feel pain. I feel gratitude. It taught me what no success ever could, that integrity is the one asset that never loses value. I've learned that contracts protect work, but character protects legacy, sometimes late at night. I still think about the beginning, the garage, the laughter, the shared dreams. I remember how good it felt to believe in something together, and then. I remember how easy it was to lose it all to pride and greed. But now, when I look around my new workspace with its second-hand furniture and quiet peace, I realize I didn't lose everything. I just lost what wasn't meant to stay. They sold my shares behind my back. But they forgot, you can't sell integrity. And in the end, that's the contract that truly matters. I pause for a moment, letting that truth sit in the air. Because at the end of every betrayal, there's always a lesson waiting. Mine was simple. Protect your work. Guard your name. And no matter who tries to rewrite your story, keep the pen in your hand. I close my laptop, look out the window, and smile. The storm is over. The lesson stayed. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit like. It tells me you believe in justice as much as I do. Subscribe for more real stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption, where truth always finds its way back. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is rebuilding yourself. I'll see you in the next story.